On today's Primetime local news, with warmer temperatures on the horizon, we have tips for those looking to start their garden.
Don't get frustrated. It's an art. It's something that takes work.
And the government of Saskatchewan's response to the rising avian flu numbers.
The best action is to take preventative measures. That really is the best answer here. There is no treatment or vaccine to cure avian influenza, so the best is to keep it out of your flocks.
Plus, the Lloydminster Bobcats have welcomed a new player to their roster.
Prime Time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Even though we just had a bit of snow, now is the time of year where people start to get their garden prepared for the upcoming season, and local professionals have some advice for starters. For those new to gardening and looking to become a green thumb, there is a few beginner garden tips that can help you kickstart your garden.
The essential thing that you need to keep in mind is just keep things simple. Go with tried and true seed, tried and true varieties of plants. Plants that look healthy, buy them, and start small.
When people start a garden, they like to grow not only flowers, but vegetables they can enjoy throughout the summer. The number one tip is to not go overboard.
Maybe for your first year, stick with things that you like to actually eat instead of trying to experiment with everything on the table. You know, if you're a big carrot fan, if you eat a lot of salad, grow the lettuce, grow the carrots, and then you'll actually see the reward of your work all the way through and it won't go to waste.
They recommend that you start your garden outside and aim to begin around May long weekend. And if you don't already own the tools necessary, there is a few you will need to pick up.
We would suggest that you start with your basic items like a shovel for first if you're doing it in a garden in the ground. But if you have a raised bed, we have small little trowels. We have small little weeding utensils that can offer you aid in working with this stuff.
Home Hardware is currently getting their greenhouse and garden center prepared for the spring with plant restocks coming soon. With nicer weather around the corner, Saskatchewan roads will be busier. Last month, SGI put a priority on following the posted speed, and Jace Mackey has more on the results of March's Traffic Safety Spotlight.
Well, last month, police in Saskatchewan had their eyes open for people going above the speed limit as part of SGI's Traffic Safety Spotlight. They were focused on speeding, and now the results are in, and Tyler McMurtry joins me to talk a little bit more about them. Tyler, just looking through this, over 5,000 people in Saskatchewan were ticketed for some kind of speeding offense, and I see a big violation was people speeding in school zones.
Yeah, we saw 5,000 plus, 5,023 to be exact, offenses for speeding or aggressive driving issued by Saskatchewan police for the month of March when we were focusing that traffic safety spotlight on the issue of speeding. There were a number of offenses for some of the more serious speeding offenses recorded as well. Speeding in school zones, speeding in construction zones, speeding past emergency vehicles or highway workers. And so these are some of the things that we want people to keep in mind as the weather warms up, as the roads become more clear. You might have that temptation to go a little heavier on the gas pedal, but we'd really encourage people to reconsider that. Think about all the other people that they'll be sharing the road with, not just other motorists, but of course, cyclists, pedestrians, even motorcyclists will be getting their bikes out of storage and hitting the road. And we want to make sure that everybody gets where they're going safely. One way we do that is by obeying speed limits.
So with the traffic safety spotlight, the goal of SGI is to put a spotlight on some of these unsafe driving tactics and encourage Saskatchewan drivers to be a little safer when they're behind the wheel. So to see this high number of tickets, over 5,000, is that considered a success for SGI?
It's good that people's behaviors are being corrected, of course. And when we look at the number of the offenses that are recorded, especially when it comes to something like speeding, it can fluctuate quite a bit. And so, in some cases, it's dependent on the weather. In some cases, the amount of offenses that police report are very much dependent on the additional enforcement that they do for that particular offense. When it comes to 5,000 speeding offenses in a month, that's not necessarily the highest or a surprising number. It was actually significantly lower than the number that we saw recorded in March of last year. Some of that might be weather dependent, of course, as well. We, of course, want people to obey the law, not have to be pulled over by a police officer and be issued a very expensive ticket. And of course, one of the things we know about speeding is the faster you're going, the more it's going to cost you. And as we noted earlier, there are some more serious speeding offenses that trigger higher fines as well.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about some of the consequences people can face when they're speeding?
Sure. So let's just talk about a regular speeding ticket. And so if you're looking at, say, 20 kilometers per hour over the limit on a regular stretch of road, that's $190, and you're looking at 2 demerit points. But if you are speeding through a school zone, for example, 20 kilometers per hour over the limit, that's a ticket of $310, and you'll get an additional demerit point as well. And then, of course, if you're speeding through a construction zone with workers present, or highway equipment with its lights flashing, that's an even more expensive category of ticket. I think you're looking at around $440 for that ticket, and the demerit points that go along with that as well. Now, for some very serious speeding offenses, for example, if you're traveling more than 50 kilometers per hour over the limit, not only are you getting a more expensive category of ticket, but you're also looking at a week-long vehicle impoundment right there at roadside. And the same goes for street racing. If you're street racing, not only do you get a ticket, but you get a 30-day vehicle impoundment, plus the ticket, plus the demerits. So it's really just a bad idea to disregard those speed limits. Though they're not there for they're not suggestions, we like to say. That's actually the law. That's actually the maximum amount you're legally allowed to travel.
So it seems like the message is it never pays to speed. It's never worth it.
Yeah, we like to say just enjoy the drive. Take a little bit of extra time, enjoy the surroundings. You get maybe one extra song in that trip if you're just slowing down and obeying those speed limits.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for taking some time. It's always great to get some of your insight.
Thanks, Chase. Great talking to you.
The Lloydminster Bobcats have signed their first prospect of the offseason. 17-year-old Aiden Herring put up 7 goals and 29 points last season in the Alberta Elite Hockey League U18 AAA division. Evan Kenny has more.
The Lloydminster Bobcats have signed 2005 born forward Aiden Herring for the 2022-23 season. Joining me now is Lloydminster Bobcats head coach and general manager Nigel Dubé. Nigel, thanks for hopping on with me. Now, just starting things off, what about Aiden caught your eye?
Yeah, with Aiden, we tracked him throughout the entire year, and he was a player as an 05 that was able to create a lot of plays, always around the puck, played for MLAC in Edmonton, and did a lot of good things, whether he had the puck or whether he was away from the puck. And I think a big part with him, being a 2005 born and coming as a 17-year-old is one of those where, there's a lot of excitement in what his potential can be and where he can get to. And I think he adds to our offensive group. And he's one of those players that brings more of a playmaking style to the game, and it's just one of those that potential to find a guy like Matthew Swanson, get him the puck, let him shoot the puck, kind of thing. And we're excited about him and moving forward with him.
Now, as you mentioned, he's a pass-first playmaker. Myself, having done the play-by-play for the Inland Steel Bobcats, when Herring did play against them, that was very, very evident. Now, you mentioned, him feeding, or the potential of him feeding Swanson. How else could you see him fitting into the lineup?
Well, I think he's one of those that, he's not afraid to go to the corners, and that's a big part of it. He can go to those hard areas. We've seen him grow throughout the year, just physically become bigger, and that's a big part of it too. And he's going to be somebody that we're going to put him with a couple shooters, but we also know that he's going to work hard and go to those areas and be committed to the 200-foot game. So it's a nice addition to any line, all the way through 1 through 4. And I think a big part of it is just what he could bring and the dynamic to his game. And I think there's a lot of growth still there, and the potential that we can get out of him moving forward, whether it's the first year or the second year, is pretty exciting for our group.
Now, Nigel, obviously there was no 2020-21 season, just due to the pandemic, but plenty of players used that time to really further the development of their game. Now, was Aiden one of those players, or was he always one of the leaders within his association?
Yeah, in that area, he's always worked hard and done everything right. And any reference that we called, it was always about he always does things right. Great kid. Make sure that on time leadership role throughout the whole way up, and that was a big part of it. And I think that he was able to take the pandemic and continue to work on his game away from the rink or when he could be at the rink. When he came back this year and just played and he enjoys the game. He's one of those kids. A little bit like a Connor Burke, where he's always happy, he's focused, but he's always happy too. And those are the personalities that we're looking for too to bring into our group.
Well, Nigel, thank you so much for taking this time and joining me. We look forward to hearing more signings throughout the summer. This was Nigel Dubé, head coach and general manager with the Lloydminster Bobcats.
Now for a further look at our regional forecast, we go to Shelby Clark. Thanks so much again, Miss Jasmine King. Now taking another look at your weather forecast, we'll be looking at the central zone of our provinces here. And on the Alberta side, we are seeing quite good temperatures in that plus range for sure. Most spots are at that single digit point, but I'd say we are warming up quite a bit from what we have been seeing throughout this week. Jasper has even reached that double digit at 11 degrees right now, 9 in Whitecourt, while it is 8 in Cold Lake and in Edson, 7 degrees in Athabasca, and is 5 and 6 in the rest on the map here. And now switching over to our Saskatchewan side, they are seeing not too bad of temperatures as well, slightly cooler compared to the Alberta side. Definitely in Melfort, they are sitting at that 2-degree point. 5 in Prince Albert, while Saskatoon and North Battleford are matching with us here in the border city. And Meadow Lake and Cold Lake are at 7 and 8 degrees. Now going over to our northern region now, they are seeing some nice temperatures compared to what they have been seeing as well. Most spots we're seeing those minus points throughout the week, but they've definitely warmed up and kind of matching with us in the central zone as well. 9 degrees in both La Loche and Buffalo Narrows, while it is 7 down in La Ronge, 6 degrees in South End, while it is 5 in Wollaston Lake and Stony Rapids, and Flin Flon and Uranium City are sitting at 4. Now switching over to this end here now, they are looking quite warm as well, with Fort McMurray and Slave Lake both seeing that 9-degree point. 8 degrees in Peace River, and the rest are seeing between 4 and 5. And now going over to our southern region, they are seeing around the same as what we are seeing as well. They aren't seeing those double digits quite yet, but they've been seeing quite warm temperatures throughout the week. Lethbridge and Medicine Hat are 9 and 8 degrees. 7 in Coronation, while Banff is also at 9 degrees. And Calgary is slightly cooler, just hitting 5. And going over on this end here now, they're seeing some slightly cooler temperatures, but they are in that plus range. 5 in Kindersley, while it's 4 in Regina, 3 in both Moose Jaw and Yorkton, and Estevan and Swift Current are slightly cooler, just hitting 1 and 2. And now looking back across the region, we're going to see what we will expect throughout our evening and throughout the night in most spots. And I think we'll be pretty happy to see that we will be warming up for our evening lows temperature-wise for sure. And, glad to see that we won't be seeing a high chance of some flurries once again. Unity will be expecting to see a low of -2, while it'll be a low of -3 for Bonnyville. Pearson will be seeing a low of -4, while most spots, as you can see, will be expecting to see a low of -5 degrees, and Isla Cross will be seeing a low of -6. But most spots will be seeing some cloudier skies throughout the evening, so we won't be expecting some high chances of some flurries, so I think we're all going to expect to see a nice warm night tonight. And now looking at temperatures tomorrow across the region, we will be seeing warmer temperatures for sure to start off our weekend, which we're going to be happy to see, especially on the Alberta side. A lot of spots will be seeing those double digits with 10 in both Marwayne, Vermilion, and St. Paul. Bonnyville will be expecting to see that 11-degree point. Lac La Biche will be expecting to see 13. And on the Saskatchewan side, they will be seeing some slightly cooler temperatures compared to the Alberta side. Most spots seeing between 7 and 8 degrees, but I think we're going to be pretty happy for the most part. We will be seeing a beautiful Friday in most spots across the region. That is another look at your weather forecast. We'll have more news coming up after the break.
Today we have Dr. Stephanie Smith, the Chief Veterinary Officer for the government of Saskatchewan, and she's here today to talk to us about the avian flu that has been spreading not only in Saskatchewan, but across the entirety of Canada. And so thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Smith.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And so tell us about the avian flu and how it kind of spreads between flocks and just what's been happening so far in Saskatchewan.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So we've had 2 detections of avian influenza in 2 flocks in Saskatchewan. We've had one in a backyard flock, and we've also had one in a commercial flock. Before that, we also reported that we had a positive detection in wildlife. We can also confirm that we've had multiple detections, in wildlife going forward. That's been pretty consistent with other provinces. As we know, other provinces in Canada have been dealing with the disease in wildlife, backyard flocks, and commercial poultry as well.
And what measures is the Saskatchewan government taking in order to stop the spread of avian influenza?
So in the case of avian influenza, this is a federally reportable disease, which means that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, or CFIA, is the lead response authority when there is a detection. So in this case, CFIA takes measures to place controls and attend on site and determine what actions are necessary. In terms of the provincial responsibilities, we are here to provide support to CFIA as well as to the poultry industry, and ensure that we're addressing any of their needs and concerns and doing our due diligence to mitigate the spread of disease. One step that we have taken is to implement an animal health control area order for the province of Saskatchewan. That is an order that prohibits the commingling of poultry from multiple sites. So things like poultry sales and shows, events where poultry are being brought to, that is what we're prohibiting at this time, so that we try to reduce the risk of disease spread.
So what should poultry producers and owners do in order to stop the spread of avian influenza and make sure it doesn't get into their flocks?
The best action is to take preventative measures. That really is the best answer here. There is no treatment or vaccine to cure avian influenza, so the best is to keep it out of your flocks. So we're asking producers and poultry owners to consider implementing biosecurity measures to try and keep the virus out. Those are things like keeping your barn doors locked, preventing visitors from coming in at this time. Again, trying to minimize those risks of bringing in the virus, using barn-specific clothing and footwear to keep the virus out. If at all possible, preventing contact with wild birds so that we don't have that risk of disease spread. And of course, monitoring your flocks closely and reporting any concerns for illness.
And what are the general risks for humans contracting avian influenza for producers and for the common person who isn't really around poultry that often?
So in terms of avian influenza, there is a low risk for spread to humans. We can become infected with the virus. However, it is very rare. We've only rarely seen detections of avian influenza impacting people. The highest risk within that category would be for people that are in constant contact with birds that are infected. So producers that may own poultry or people that have pet birds that are in direct contact, those are where the higher risk would be. So we would simply just indicate for folks that have concerns about that nature, contact with your healthcare professional if you have any concerns. Again, risk is low, but you do want to do your due diligence and do report any concerns if you have a concern that you may have avian influenza in your flocks.
Thank you so much for the interview, Dr. Smith, and all of the information.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Primetime local news, we are chatting with today an author and musician, Shane Wilson, who has won 2 book awards on this critically acclaimed novel called The Smoke in His Eyes. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we're glad to be able to have you on here. Now, of course, I always start off with this as usual with these author interviews, and I would like to ask for this novel, with having all these awards, what can people expect when reading this novel?
It's always the hardest question for, I think, a writer to answer about his or her own book, right? Is like, what is it about? I know, like, so for me, it's about it's about creativity and what it means to be an artist. And it was informed by all these questions I had after I published my first novel about why is it that certain people feel creative and why is it that certain people feel the need to share that creativity with the world? And so those are the questions that I wanted to explore in the novel. I think that what most people want to know is like, who are the characters and what's going on, right? And so the novel is the story of this musician named TJ, who is a very technically proficient musician, but feels a disconnection in his art from what he wants it to be. and he meets who has become who is kind of like the literal embodiment of inspiration in the novel, a character named Muna, and she helps him sort of navigate his own childhood trauma and mine that experience for inspiration that he can then channel into more honest art. And so that's sort of like the plot of it, if you will, right? It's about different kinds of artists. TJ's a musician. He has another friend named Leela who is also a musician. They're in a band together. This third character, Muna, is a visual artist. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to explore the different reasons why we create certain things, and what we do with that creation once it's done.
We were already kind of speaking about how many awards that you have won for this novel, but since the release, how has support and response been that you've witnessed with fans and readers so far since the release?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is a novel that is a few years old now, and when it initially released, it was well received, and then everything kind of shut down, so I was unable to, go on the promotional circuit like I would have liked to. And I think what was kind of lucky, you mentioned the awards, is that a lot of the awards ended up opening the window of uh, possibility for more books in terms of when they were published. I think maybe as a result of COVID or whatever. And so normally this book would have missed the deadline, so to speak, right, for this award. But then because of the expanded window, we were able to get it in and see, just to see what happens, because I've got a new novel coming in the fall. And so in the name of trying to generate more interest and all of that, right, we decided to put it out there. And yeah, so like there's been a little bit of a second wave of support for it as a result of the newfound success, right?
Okay, and I'm going to ask about that novel coming up here in the fall soon. But first, before we get to that, I want to kind of start off with your experience, being a musician and an author. How has that transition been from being a musician into writing novels and kind of transitioning into this kind of different career path?
Okay, so this is complex as well. I was not a musician really for most of my life. I've always been a writer. I remember when I was in like second grade, I wrote this dumb story about how I was afraid of this big dog that lived across the street from my parents' house, and I drew a cover for it and pasted it on the front of this like three-prong folder, and I made like a little book, right? And I like let people read it and everything. And my parents bought a typewriter, an old like click clack typewriter when I was a kid, and they taught me how to spell on it. I would just ask them how to spell words, and I would like hunt them out. So like I was always like the mechanics of writing were always a part of me, right? And my household was very storytelling centric. My grandfather was a great storyteller, so the idea of stories was always really important to me. Um, it was not until I started working on the second novel that I ever picked up a guitar, because I knew that this character that I wanted to write was a guitarist, and I wanted it to seem genuine, right? I wanted the way that I wrote that character and the way that I wrote the actual motions of playing the instrument. I wanted it to feel legitimate to someone. If someone were to pick up this novel who was also a guitarist, like I wanted them to be able to see that experience on the page, right? And so I sort of taught myself to play as I was writing this book. And in a lot of ways, TJ's journey to writing this one honest song over the course of the story was also my journey toward writing my first song, because I ended up writing an original song that is named in the book, right? And so now when I get to do these readings, I get to play this song that is in the book. That's kind of a cool sort of three-dimensional way of interacting with the text, right?
And now, exactly, what will this next novel be about that's coming out in the fall?
Yeah, so all of these novels so far have been written in what I would call like an extended universe, sort of like what Marvel does, where all these things kind of overlap, but at the same time they're all standalone stories. And so this third novel is another piece of that puzzle, right? I'm building out this like contemporary fantasy world where there are like magical beings that populate the world that we live in, right? And so I've been piecing this mythology together over the course of multiple novels, and this third novel is going to kick off sort of a trilogy that's set in this world that's going to answer almost all of the rest of the questions. Yeah, so the next novel is kind of like a apocalyptic sort of story, and it kicks off sort of the end of the world that will take place over the next three books. Yeah, which I'm not sure that it's a great time for that kind of story, or maybe it's the perfect time for that kind of story, but we'll see, right?
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Shane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Ending off with taking a quick look at your 7-day forecast here. We will be expecting a warm day with 9 degrees tomorrow with a lot more sun. So get ready because spring is right around the corner here. Check out all those double digits coming up on the weekend and into next week. We got 13 degrees Saturday and 11 on Sunday. So we'll be seeing a beautiful weekend with a mix of some sun and cloud on both those days. The next week we'll be starting off strong with Monday with 12 degrees with a lot more sun peeking behind those clouds. So next week will be a nice start to it. And I think we'll finally be moving into our spring season that everyone was hoping to see soon. Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be seeing 14 degrees on Tuesday, seeing 9 degrees on Wednesday, so kind of dropping cooler on Wednesday, but then we'll pick it right back up to double digits next Thursday with 10 degrees with a little bit more sun.